So in this video, I'm going to try and untangle the mess that is the timeline for the morning of the 28th through until the time or around the time that Jen left to go pick up Maddie. So basically I'm wanting to go through until the point when Stefan arrives home after Jen has gone to pick up Maddie. I think in terms of length for the video, that's probably going to be quite a long one anyway. And like I said, this one is a whole tangled mess of lies. So I think it's going to take quite a lot of brain power for all of us to try and wrap our heads around this. So to try and go beyond that 2:49 or whatever it was time is going to just probably make all our brains explode. Now, how am I going to tackle this? I want to listen to as little of Stefan's narrative as possible because I think, like so many of you, I am triggered by the sound of that man's voice. I cannot stand listening to him, and we all know it's all a pack of lies anyway. So what I've gone with is the interview where it's the interview from the 27th, where you have the female detective and the male detective interviewing him, because we all know that that's the interview where they nail his ass to the wall and call him out on his lies. So that's probably the most rewarding one for us to listen to. I've edited out a lot of the crap that he spouts where, they ask him a simple question and it takes him 10 minutes to answer it, and you've got no idea what the heck he's talking about anyway, because he's got no idea what he's talking about. So I'll look at Stefan's narrative, but not too heavily. Like I said, he's just full of it anyway. That's not going to give us a clear picture of what actually happened. And I will compare that, of course, with surveillance, phone data, etc. Then from that, I'm going to have a look at Jen's narrative and also how that compares with Stefan's narrative and how the phone data, etc. fits in with that. Now, before I do so, I just want to give a huge shout out again to all my new subscribers, all my new members, all those wonderful people. I'm really starting to see a wonderful community happening here on my channel. It is so encouraging. It is just fantastic, and I really love you guys. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody who's been coming and engaging with my channel. It's kind of exciting to see my channel growing. It's certainly exciting to see that I've reached a point where I'm struggling to keep up with the number of comments under my videos. So I will apologise to anyone whose comments I don't get a chance to respond to. I do read all your comments, but there's only so many hours in the day, so I try to get back to everyone, but sometimes there's just so many comments that I just can't. So I love you all. Thank you so much for the support. Okay, now before we jump into this one, I want to have a look at the timeline very briefly from the evening before. Okay, so I've covered this in depth in another video, and I'll link that below. But I've just narrowed in on the times a bit more here. So Maddie arrived home at 8:29. Most of this is based on phone data. In fact, I think all of these particular ones are based on phone data. It's not till the following day that we start getting footage of vehicles as well. So Maddie arrived home at 8:29. Stearns arrived at the apartment 8:41. Jen arrived home 10:21. Then we have Maddie's phone going upstairs. I'm not going to make presumptions here that it was Maddie that took her phone upstairs. We just know that Maddie's phone went upstairs at 11:19. At 11:38 the phone was plugged onto the charger, and 11:39, just 1 minute later, Jen sends a text, or a number of texts, to Stefan. The roommate returns home sometime between 11 and 11:30. She says that she sees nobody, so I'm thinking it's between 11:20 and 11:30, just narrowing it in a bit more. She says that she hears someone in room 4 when she arrives home. At 11:54, Jen's phone is put on the charger. So much for her falling asleep really quickly when she takes her meds, because that's another 15 minutes after texting Stefan and 25 minutes after Maddie's phone went upstairs. Then sometime between 11:30 and 2:30, the flatmate hears sounds coming from room 4. So that's what we have solidly in place for the 25th. There are a few other things that I've left out because they're not fully verified. So what I'm after right now is verified information, although I did discuss all the other things in my previous video. Same with this video. I will look at everything relating to the timeline as we go through, but at the end I'll home in on what is solidly verified. So let's jump in. Let's get Stearns out of the way first, because that's the worst part to deal with.
The timeline from like when you guys woke up and took her to school and all that.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way, so we made amazingly good time.
I don't mean to interrupt you, okay? Neither of us were here yesterday, so if you can be kind of like specific about like times and stuff like that, okay?
Woke up around 7:15, somewhere around there, which is an early start for us, but we had talked about getting McDonald's breakfast beforehand, so we wanted to make good time. We did make good time. We got out the door maybe 7:30ish, 7:45ish, maybe.
Honestly, the guy is such a dumbass. How many 13-year-olds do you know of that could get out of bed sometime after 7 and be ready to be out the door by 7:30? BS. Especially if, as he claims, she was super tired. Now, we know that didn't happen anyway. Now, the data that we have in front of us here on the screen is from Maddie's phone. I'm going to start with the middle paragraph first. And we looked at it yesterday where the phone was plugged into charge at 11:38 the night before. Then it was unplugged from the charger at 7:04. And then if you look up to the top of the screen, it says at 7:05 there were 113 steps, and another 50 steps at 7:15, and then back down to the middle paragraph, it says the phone is then powered off at 7:16. Now that's a heck of a lot of steps for that phone. So I'm curious to know what he was doing during that time with that phone. I'm going to take a guess that the phone was taken downstairs, but it seems that he carried it around for a bit as well. And I'd love to know why he was carrying it around. What was the whole point of what he was doing there? I suspect that the phone was then left in the downstairs fake bedroom, because that's where Jen claims that she found it later in the day. And when you look at steps for the phone later in the day, I would be leaning towards it being downstairs for most of the day in that downstairs bedroom. Possibly. I have done a whole very long video on that, so if you go back through my playlist you'll be able to find that also. Okay, so he's told us that he supposedly left at around 7:30. Now I'm going to give these detectives a lot of grace because you can imagine how many hours they were putting in at the time when Maddie was missing and then after she was recovered. So I think mistakes in these reports are quite forgivable. So if we look at the second paragraph here, they've said on March 26. We know that's actually February 26. At 0:35 hours, a silver Lincoln with the tag IYLL82 is observed on the workshop camera of the complex. A male exits the vehicle, throws something into the complex dumpster. The male is wearing a red shirt and tan pants. At 7:40, the vehicle leaves through the east gate of the complex. Okay, so on this page, this is the description of the images that are shared, which are, of course, all redacted. Understandably, though. So, 7:30, the vehicle is caught on the complex camera with the victim slumped over in the passenger seat. 7:35 is when it is caught on the complex camera with him throwing something in the dumpster. Now, down here it says 7:50. Stefan left complex with victim and U-turned on Churchtown Loop, Hunter Park. So, while that is a discrepancy with him leaving at 7:40 and then it says 7:50 here, I think the 7:40 refers to when he was recorded as exiting through the gate. I believe the 7:50 would be recording when the U-turn occurred. So that is separate from him exiting the gate. So it looks like he's gone through the gate at 7:40. 10 minutes later, he's done a U-turn and returned. Now, I have a theory on that, which I will discuss when we get to Jen's narrative.
Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there. We got to McDonald's. We're close to McDonald's. I said, "Do you still want it?" Wasn't interested in the McDonald's anymore, so we continued on. And she wanted to be dropped off a little down the ways from the school. But that was sometime probably between 8:20 and 8:40ish, somewhere in there. It was along the stretch of the road that on the right side that has all the communities on it before you get to the overpass.
Okay, so we know that's a lie as well. So after catching him doing a U-turn at 7:50, at 8:10 he's caught on camera again driving south on John Young Parkway with Maddie still in the front passenger seat, still in the same position. 8:19 he is recorded using the gate clicker to re-enter the complex, and then it has him 12 minutes later, 8:31, he then leaves the complex again by the rear exit. Maddie's still in the front passenger seat, still in the same position. I'll come back to these bits of timeline shortly. Let's hear what he has to say.
The McDonald's that you guys were going to stop at, did you pull into the plaza at any point?
No, she 86 the idea before we even got there.
What do you mean by 86?
Poo-pooed the idea, didn't want it anymore.
Okay.
Wasn't in the mood anymore.
At any point while you were driving to the school, did you make a U-turn?
Yeah, I tried to sell her on McDonald's one more time because I was still kind of hungry, but at that point she was also just wanting to get to school.
Okay.
So
Where?
we turned right back around.
Where did you make that U-turn at?
Actually, the school park, not the school parking lot, the church parking lot. I pulled into that, turned around and pulled back out. Did a UE there and went back to the McDonald's, and she still wasn't having it, and that's when we came back. I'm sorry,
So
I'm doing my
no,
best.
that's okay. So now that we know that you came from Jungyoung Parkway and you made a left on Town Loop, so you passed the McDonald's.
Yeah, that was when she said no to McDonald's the first time.
Okay. So you guys keep on going on Town Loop.
Yeah, but at that point we still had a lot of time to kill. Very early.
So what did you guys do?
Drove towards the school, made a U-turn, came back, tried to do the McDonald's thing again. She didn't want it.
So where did you, one more time, where
her-
did you do the U-turn at?
It probably was right by the church because it was still way too early for school. So it was on that stretch of road. I mean, they had the meeting there in a separation, so that left turn where the church is, you can make a U-turn there.
I love the way they just sat back and let him bury himself. He didn't just dig his own hole, he dug his own hole and buried himself. Because we know that none of that happened. And they've questioned him about the U-turn, and he's decided to just throw in a random U-turn into his narrative and then decide that, oh, well, we went back to Macca's, that's probably the U-turn. Now, the guy's really dense. If they're asking you about a U-turn, it means they've got you on camera doing that U-turn, you fool. Making it up is only going to make you look even worse. But anyway, this doesn't exactly fit in with the real timeline, is the point that I'm trying to make by this. But I just had to have a little snark at the guy, as Grizzly would say, because he deserves all the snarks that go his way, basically.
And then after you dropped her off, what did you do?
Stayed, talked to her for a minute, made sure, is it all right that you're going early? Because it was still early. She said, yeah, it's fine. I'm going to hang out and wait for my friends to get there, which she does sometimes, so it didn't sound outrageous or anything. That was it. Told her to have a good day. I loved her. She told me she loved me too. I turned around to leave, and I was watching her in my rearview mirror. And she looked like she was walking in the right direction. She was rummaging in her bag a little bit, like I said, but still sort of just shambling in the right direction while she was doing it. So it looked normal. It looked okay.
If your lips are moving, if your lips are moving, if your lips are moving, then la la la, babe.
This guy is a classic example of over-explaining. Massive, massive long story, and the whole thing is just complete utter BS.
Okay, and then what did you do after you left the area?
I left to go to the local vape shop because I needed some more vape juice. They weren't quite open yet, so I ended up going back home. Hung out with Jen for a little while. Waited about an hour or so, and then went back and checked the vape shop again. It was open, so I got what I needed there, and came back home and hung out with Jen again for a while.
Do you remember what time you came home?
The first time was probably right around 10, close to it, and then I waited here and went back to the vape shop, probably finished at the vape shop and came back home again a little after 11.
Okay, so the significant things here are none of what he said, actually. Although sort of maybe a little bit. Yes, he did return to the apartments at around 10:14. But before that, let's jump up to the top paragraph, and I'll just give you a trigger warning. This is the one that I hate. At 9:35, he is caught on camera driving into a garage on South John Young Parkway. He drives up to the second level, parks near the northeast corner, backs his vehicle into a parking space by the stairs, obviously trying to make it not so visible, exits his vehicle, walks towards the rear of his vehicle, opens the trunk, and then 6 minutes later, 9:41, he's seen placing Maddie, who is wearing a green sweatshirt and blue pants, into the trunk of his vehicle. He then exits the garage. So 9:35, he enters the garage, drives up to the second level, backs in. 9:41, he's caught on camera putting Maddie into the boot of his vehicle. The trunk, sorry. Then at 10:14, he re-enters the complex through the east gate. I'm not sure if that is the front gate. It just says east gate. Maddie is no longer seen in the front passenger seat of his vehicle, as we know. We know why. Then he is caught again driving to the dumpster and throwing away more stuff at 10:54. And then he actually leaves at that point in time. And I've got other bits which I'll show that with a little bit further on. But at 11:22, he makes a purchase at the vape shop and then exits. That's actually significant, and you'll see why in a little while. Okay, and then from there, he does actually return to the apartment complex. That's not covered here because I think this is all talking about camera footage of the vehicle.
Okay. You said the first time that you hung out with Jen for a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Was Jen here when you got here at
Yes.
10? Okay.
I think so. She might have been at her blood appointment. Let me double check. I know she had a blood appointment at some point during the day.
It's okay. We don't have to ask her right now.
Sorry, everything's a blur.
So she might have been here. She might have not have been here
I
the first time.
believe she was here because she was sleeping in as much as she possibly could because she's been messed up with a new work schedule. So she had to be here because she didn't want to sleep in.
Okay.
I'll double check, but yeah, I believe she was here.
And then what time did you say you left again to the smoke shop?
Maybe after an hour or so, maybe 11 or so.
Okay. And then what time did you get to the smoke shop?
It's maybe 10 minutes away, so not long after that. Stopped in and got some juice and
And then after the smoke shop, what did you do?
came home. Yeah.
Okay, for how long?
At least until maybe 12:30, 12:45ish, something like that.
And then what'd you do after that?
I had a couple errands to run over on 192. I was going to go to House Rules Games down by Oak and 192, but I didn't make it that far. I got a flat tire on the way.
Do you remember where you got your flat tire?
It was on 192. I pulled into one of those plazas somewhere. It's been about 10 years since I switched out a tire, though, so I made a lot of rookie mistakes and ended up pinning my thumb between the frame and the jack. Yeah, I'm lucky it's not a lot worse than it could have been.
Okay, so I'm going to go through what's been provided. Don't worry if you're having trouble wrapping your head around it all. I will provide a proper timeline at the end of this video with the key points. But now this matches. He made a phone call to Jen at 10:17, which lasted 8 minutes. 10:54, we see him again at the dumpster, putting more stuff in. He made another phone call to Jen, 11:02, which only lasted 48 seconds. I'm guessing possibly he got voicemail and she may have been in her appointment at that point in time. 11:03 begins moving from the apartment, meaning he left the apartment at 11:03. And I've got all the phone data on separate pages, which I will show you after going through Jen's things. 11:22 makes a purchase at the smoke shop, and he's seen in a different shirt than what he was wearing earlier. Now, I just want to highlight the information from Maddie's phone. The phone was turned back on at 10:55, and it moved 8 steps. The only person in the apartment at 10:55 was Stefan. So he's turned it back on. He hasn't moved it very far. So it looks like he's picked it up, turned it on, maybe taken a few steps and then put it back down in the same spot. So we know that it was him based on the time frame who turned her phone off. We know that it was him who turned her phone back on again at 10:55, and it seems that he has quite likely left it wherever it was that he had originally put it, because it's only gone 8 steps. Unless, of course, he did more steps before then and then turned it back on. Could be either one, I guess. So I'm just going to go through the key points from this page. I apologise if I repeat myself at any point. This is such a complicated timeline to wrap your head around that even with all this stuff in front of me, I'm forgetting what I've said and what I've not said already. So in the top paragraph, we've gone through most of the stuff. At 10:14, it re-enters the complex. I know I've already said that. Why is that important? Because Jen's not there, and yet in his interview, he claimed that she was there. I think she was sleeping in. No, Stefan, you dumbass. She wasn't there. How do you not know that? Okay, at 10:54 is when you have him dumping stuff in the dumpster. 11:03 is when he's basically left the complex, and he does not return till 11:56. Keep that in mind for when we're listening to Jen's narrative, because this highlights what is one of Jen's biggest lies, because it is a consistent lie that she pretty much stuck with in every single one of her interviews, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so after him arriving back at 11:56, he then leaves by the rear gate of the complex at 12:44. This is when we have the long list of all the camera sightings of his vehicle, tracking him almost to the point where he left Maddie. At least it allowed them to narrow down the area, and then of course we had that wonderful witness who came forward and saved the day. But just a quick rundown of the important points of that timeline, and then we're going to go back to Jen. Okay, so most significant in terms of all the footage is that at 1:16 they catch him heading south on Old Hickory Tree Road. That's the last bit of camera footage they have until 2:11, in which case they catch him same spot heading back the other way. This time he has the spare tyre on. So basically they've lost track of him for just under an hour. When they do catch the vehicle again, it's missing the tyre. So we know that's the time frame when he basically took Maddie and left her where he left her. So then you have him being observed at 2:43, returning through the rear gate again of the apartment complex. At 3:24, he goes back and dumps something else into the dumpster. Presumably that's when he dumped the tyre or the wheel. Why you would do that anyway, because wouldn't you need that for a new tyre? Then at 3:28 he returns, so he basically dumps something in the dumpster, leaves, and immediately returns at 3:28 with more items to throw away. And then again at 4:36 he returns to throw more items into the dumpster. He was one busy boy that day. Now, in terms of Stefan's timeline, I'm going to leave it at that and move on to Jen. And then I'll tie it all together for you so that it maybe begins to make a bit of sense. So let's have a look at what Jen was doing on this particular day.
I was woken up at some time. For the longest time, I've been saying he woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning because I assumed he was taking her to school and getting ready for school. But in reality, I don't know what time he woke me up. The sun was out a little bit. It was still a little dark.
Okay, so I was curious because I had wondered if perhaps when he went into her room and put the dog on the leash and took the dog out, that was just an excuse to retrieve the leash. Perhaps the leash was in her bedroom and that was just an excuse to retrieve it. But when I look at the data from February, and this is specifically Kissimmee, so it says that sunrise on the 26th of February was at 6:53 a.m. So if she's saying it was still a little bit dark, then he must have gone and put the dog on the leash around 7 a.m.-ish. So possibly around the same time that he took Maddie's phone off the charger, he also went down, put the dog on the leash. I'm wondering if this is actually the time frame for him putting Maddie into the car, and that perhaps the reason that he needed to put the dog on the leash, Maddie used to walk that dog, Maddie was very attached to that dog, was it getting in the way because it sensed that something was wrong and he needed to tie it up somewhere or keep it out of the way so he could get Maddie out of the house. I also question if that leash is the leash that was found in the car. So perhaps he restrained the dog, put Maddie in the car, maybe retrieved the leash. I'm not sure, but I'm going to come back to that. Well, no, I'll cover that now. We have accounts from the cameras saying that she was slumped forward in the vehicle. And then later accounts, the seat is put backwards. And they retrieve a dog lead or two dog leads from the car. And as much as I hate saying this, was there at one point in time, is that what he used to hold Maddie in place essentially? Is that why he returned at 7:50? Because he needed to get that dog lead again, or he needed to find some way of securing Maddie to keep her still in the car. That's a morbid thought, but it's just something that I need to throw out there for people to think about and people to speculate on. But in terms of when he went in to get the dog, looks like this happened around 7 a.m. if we're basing it on her saying that it was still a little dark. So then that to me says probably around sunrise. Sunrise was 6:53, so fits in with when the phone was taken off the charger.
And I was very sleepy when I got up. I was kind of drunk. but he came in to walk the dog, to put the leash on the dog and walk him.
Was the dog in the room with you?
Yes.
So did he wake you up on purpose, or was it just kind of the causation of him opening the door and you realizing somebody was there?
Yeah, the causation of him
Okay.
putting the leash on the dog, because the way the dog reacted, he gets very nervous and will urinate if you put the leash on him too directly. You have to like be nice and talk to him. Yeah, he's a very he's a nervous dog. Yeah. So I got up to try to help him, and he said, no, go back to sleep. I'm fine. I got this. And I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. So I laid back down and went to sleep. I heard noise in the kitchen, but I'm not sure who it could have been. Getting ready, but it could have been Stefan. It could have been any of my roommates.
Now, in order to avoid making this video too long, we do know that one of the roommates was in the kitchen preparing breakfast and doing stuff in that period of time between when Stefan left and when Jen got up. So I'm going to say that that's probably the noise she heard, or if, as I speculated, Stefan restrained the dog somehow, perhaps as she was drifting off to sleep, she could hear the dog scrabbling somewhere in the kitchen because it was trying to get free. Okay, so the big issue I have with her saying that she presumed that it could have been Maddie getting ready. Maddie would have need to have used Jen's bathroom to get ready of a morning, wouldn't she? Her meds were in there, meaning that if she was going to take her ADHD meds that day, she had to use Jen's bathroom. Presumably, her hairbrush was in there. I haven't actually looked closely at the images from the apartment, and you know that now I'm going to have to go do that. But where was her hairbrush? Now, this is something I am actually going to cover in another video, but to me, Jen saying that she heard sounds in the kitchen, presumed that that must have been Maddie, doesn't fly with me, because Maddie should have gone through Jen's room and gone into Jen's bathroom to get herself ready for school. We know that the roommate upstairs wasn't keen on sharing her bathroom with men, but let's look at this logically. Maddie would have been accustomed to using the downstairs bathroom because everything that she used would be down there or in her little annex. So she would not have used the upstairs bathroom. At the very least, she needed to brush her teeth before school. Jen doesn't question any of this. She notices Stefan retrieving the dog, but she's never commented on the fact that her daughter never went through to go to the bathroom at any point in time. Interesting. Anyway, let's get back to the actual narrative. Okay, so looking at the bottom paragraph, we have Jen's phone on a wireless charger between 11:54 and 19 minutes past 9 the following morning. It was set for an alarm at 9 o'clock, but at some point in time, while it was still on the charger, that was turned off. So it appears that Jen got out of bed at around 20 past 9 that morning, which I think kind of fits in with her story when you have her talking about going to her appointment. It certainly doesn't fit in with Stefan claiming that when he got back sometime after 10, that he believed Jen was there and that she was sleeping in. No, she wasn't. Don't know why he even said that, because it shows that when he got back, he must have known that Jen wasn't there.
I fell asleep again, and I didn't wake up, I think, until 9 o'clock in the morning.
Did you ever leave the bedroom in that time frame?
No.
So he came in, you were kind of awoken up based on him interacting with the dog, but you stayed in bed, you didn't leave the bedroom. So if you woke up at like 9, so you never...
That morning.
Monday morning.
No.
So the last time you would have been Sunday evening?
Sunday.
Okay.
Now, if you watched my first timeline video, I do have some reservations over whether or not Jen actually did see Maddie on the Sunday evening. She's very vague about all details about Maddie during that evening, which to me is interesting at the very least. But let's carry on with this timeline for the morning of the 26th.
So you said about 9 o'clock on Monday you wake up?
Yeah. I wake up. I have a doctor's appointment. I leave sometime between 9:30 and 9:45. And I head over there. It's blood work appointment. The appointment's for 10:15, but they take a while to see me.
Where was your appointment at?
LabCorp. And do you want me to tell you exactly which one?
Sure.
Oh wait, I'm on my phone.
When we get it back, we'll go back to it.
Okay, slight segue, and please forgive me, but I've just got to have a bit of a snark about that stupid fake laugh over, oh, you've got my phone, ha! Does she really think she's convincing anyone?
Had my appointment. I finished there sometime between 11:15. Then I headed home. When I got home, Stefan was there. I had talked to him a little bit earlier while I was waiting for my blood work appointment, and he let me know, oh, I'm so sorry, I left my phone at home by accident.
Okay, so we know that they recorded that there was a phone call between Jen and Stefan at 10:17, showed on her phone as 10:18, but I'm going to go through some of these maps. Now, if you didn't see the previous video, these maps show the locations of the mobile phones in relation to cell towers, basically. Now, the key up in the top left-hand corner, you have that salmony colour. It says C. Stearns. That's actually Stefan, because clearly his dad bought his phone for him also. Then you have purple, which we're not going to see as much of this time round. Purple is Maddie's phone. The pale blue is Jen's phone. So I'm going to just start here with 9:52. Now, if you look at the map, you can see the blue there, and it shows you the sweep of the location where that phone was. The red down the bottom, the red house, that's actually the apartment. So you can see that by 9:42, Jen was actually on the way to her appointment. We know that Stefan was actually nowhere near the apartments at that time. We've seen that in the previous stuff with Stefan, and I'll put all that in the timeline at the end anyway. But you can see that Jen's phone is basically moving away from the apartment. The sweep has it somewhere in that radius that is outside of where the house is. You can see the vehicle sightings of Stearns' vehicle. What they've done is they've recorded them in terms of, obviously it wasn't in 3 places at 9:52, but that's kind of showing the route. If I had my glasses on, I could probably see which one is the most recent one out of those. But essentially you can see he was not at the house when she left to go to her appointment, which was at 9:52. Now I'm going to go through a few more of these slides. Now it seems that they've triangulated her phone there So that's why you have that circle with the dot in the middle. They're saying that's precisely where she was. So she was at the location of her appointment at that point in time from around 9:59 to 10:02. Just showing you that, yes, she did go to that appointment. So we can confirm now that she did go to that appointment. Stearns was still out and about. But the next slide gave me cause for questionings. Now, how interesting is this? It could just be that this just happened to be the same route between where Stefan had been and back to the house. But you have the dot showing Jen's exact location. And at 10:05, you have a camera sighting of Stearns' car in that location. Did they meet up, or did he just happen to drive past the same location where she was on his way back to the house? I'm kind of leaning towards that when we consider the time frame of, like, the travel time frame, but it's still very interesting to me. So in some of the slides they only show one of the phones. So in this slide they've just shown Jen's phone, and they've basically shown the precise location of where it was between 10:06 and 10:15. So if you remember, in his interview, Stefan claimed that when he returned, Jen was at the apartment. You can see here that he has returned to the apartment. It's under where they've redacted it. Jen's still off at her appointment. So when he returned to the apartment, she was not there. You'd think he would know that, right? Particularly given their claims that they hang out in Jen's room. Well, clearly he wasn't hanging out in Jen's room, because then he would know that Jen wasn't there. And here you have the map showing that Maddie's phone has been switched back on at 10:55. Suddenly her phone and Stefan's phone are both pinging off the same tower. Jen is still at her appointment, and it appears, well, it must be pinging off multiple towers, but you can see a faint sweep off that bullseye thing showing one of the towers where it's pinging off. But so 10:55, when Maddie's phone was turned on, Jen was still at her appointment. Now, keep in mind that it was shortly after Maddie's phone was turned back on that Stefan is then seen dumping more stuff in the dumpster, and then he heads off. Now, you kind of have to really squint to see the location of Jen's phone there, because it almost blends in with all the water. But if you look straight up from the bigger sweep of Stefan's phone, you can see that Jen's phone is still at her appointment. You can tell from the sweep of the two towers that Stefan is on the move. Because if you look at where the two sweeps intersect, that would have to be the location of his phone. Meaning that at 3 minutes past 11, he's no longer at the apartment. Jen has not yet returned to the apartment, as you can see from that itty bitty sweep of her phone higher up on the map. So Jen's saying that he was there when she returned to the apartment was a big fat lie, and yet she said it in every interview. So you can see here from the map that Jen finally returned home at 11:27. Stefan is miles away. You can see he's on the move because you're getting pings off a few different towers, basically. So here she is saying she returned home and Stefan was there and they hung out together in her bedroom until he left later on to go do errands. That is complete utter BS. And I'm wondering why she felt the need to lie about that. I mean, seriously, could you really confuse the fact that you came home and no one was home, and instead think that you came home and you hung out with somebody and had a conversation with them, and that they were there in your bedroom sitting at your desk when you got home? Because that is one of the comments that she actually made. So, major lie here. And it is a consistent lie. She has stuck with this lie throughout every interview. I haven't actually checked the derivative use interview, but or every other interview she lies and says he was there when she got back from her appointment.
He said that he had gone to the vape shop and they were closed and they didn't open. So he waited there for a while and left, and then said he was going to go back later. When I saw him at the house, everything was normal. We were chatting, we were talking, he was acting normal. He was sitting in my computer chair just messing around on his phone. While we were hanging out, he mentioned something along the lines of, "Oh man, I've been avoiding this phone update for a really long time. I should probably update it now." And I said, "Do it, don't avoid it, just get it over with." And he updates his phone and then tells me, "Oh my god, I don't know what button I just pressed, but I just factory reset my entire phone."
Okay, I'll go through this data on the cell tower maps as well. But at 11:56 is when the Lincoln enters through the rear gate of the complex. So that's when he returned back at 11:56. So Jen had been home for a good half hour before he returned. You'd think that she would actually remember him actually physically returning. It's got him leaving at 12:44, but that's jumping ahead a little bit. Okay, so in the bottom paragraph here, upon reviewing Stefan's cell phone download, the following was observed. At 12:12, a factory reset was done on the phone. Now it does mention the second reset at being done at midnight of the 27th, but that's not here in this time frame right now. So he returned to the apartment, and while him and Jen were both there, he did do that factory reset. So she was definitely present when he did the factory reset. Makes it interesting when you hear her slipping up and saying that he had said that he needed to reset his phone. Was that part of the conversation that occurred? Who knows? But yes, they were both in the house together at the time that he did the factory reset. Supposedly hanging out in Jen's bedroom. Okay, so because it relates to what I've just said, I'm going to play that next part of the interview where she is saying to the detectives, "Oh, well, I don't know how that happened or whatever," and, giving her long spiel about the conversation between her and Stefan about him resetting the phone. To me, it sounds like a narrative from her. Sounds like she's just giving far too much information. But not only that, the other reason I'm putting it in, because it actually really amuses me when you watch the body language from the detectives. They're not buying that soggy bread. You can tell from their body language they don't believe what she's saying. That's my interpretation. Let me know what you think. But certainly they've gone still. They're not giving her any cues to show that they believe her. They're not giving her any cues to suggest that they want to hear more of that story. They're just sitting there, letting her run her mouth.
And I said, how the hell does that happen? That gives you options now when you reset your phone? He goes, yeah, apparently I wasn't paying attention and I just pressed the button and it happened. And I said, oh, that's unfortunate. That sucks. Later on, he tells me he's going to go back out, and I think this is around 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Still on Monday?
Yes, still Monday. 12:30 in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He tells me he's going to go back out. He's going to stop at a few gaming shops, and then he'll meet me at the house at 2:30 so we can get together. He left. I hung out in the house for a while. Was waiting for 2:30 to roll around. 2:30 rolls around, and I'm already calling Stefan, and he's not picking up his phone. 2:30 comes, I leave. About 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from him going, I just got back home. I left my phone home again. I'm so sorry. How long ago did you leave? And I said, about 10 minutes ago. He goes, I'm so sorry, I missed it. I really wanted to go with you. And I was just like, it's fine. I figured he wasn't going to make it because when I looked at the time when he left and said he was going to visit 3 shops, I didn't think he had enough time to visit them.
So just to make it clear with the data, just backtracking a bit, so you can see that at 10 to 12, so roughly 20 minutes before he reset his phone, he's on the way back to the house. Now here's the thing, she's saying that she didn't think he'd make it back in time because he was going to go to 3 separate shops. And the story that they're telling us is that he wanted to go to these shops to look at new cards that were being released. Now here you have the time frame as to when he was at the complex. He was there between 11:57 and 12:47, meaning that he left at about 1:45. Even if you allow 15 minutes to get back into the business district, that still gives him over an hour and a quarter to go to 3 shops just to look at trading cards. And then another quarter of an hour, I guess, to get back. And she's saying that she didn't believe that he would be able to do it in that time. Well, that doesn't seem credible to me. Especially because he's not a woman that was going out shopping for clothes, was he? He was a bloke. Chances are he was going to look for the cards that he wanted and head back, in her mind. And yet she seems convinced here that he wouldn't possibly make it back in time. Okay, I'll finish going through her narrative and then I'll pull up the maps again to show you their locations at different times from around the time when she went to pick up Maddie, because that should clarify a few things perhaps.
He told me while he was gone that he got a flat tire somewhere on 182. The wheel just shredded and fell apart. So he was changing the tire and it took him a really long time to do it. He said he hurt his thumb while changing the tire, like the frame or something slipped and something pinched his finger and he ended up having to yank it out. And he said he hurt his finger.
Now, just as an aside here, and I know that many of you have noticed this and commented on this, but she doesn't have her own separate narrative relating to Stefan. The minute she starts talking about Stefan, the narrative is basically in sync with his narrative. That to me is extremely disturbing. When you have two narratives that are so much in sync, that suggests that you have a story that's been cooked up between them. Her narrative, even if she's relaying what he's told her, should have more variety than what it does.
So he tells me all that. I get off the phone with him. I'm waiting. I wait for about an hour and 10 minutes. 4:04, the bell rings, and I'm waiting. I'm the first in line.
Now, I'm going to cover the time frame from like 4:10 onwards in the next video. So I'm not going to show you all the maps and everything from that time frame onwards, but I'm going to go up to that time frame. So we have 12:49. You can see Stearns' phone is still at the apartment, but there is a sighting recorded of his vehicle. I think, hopefully I mentioned that the orange vehicle is his vehicle. I'm guessing by now you figured that out if I didn't mention it. So 12:49, he's well and truly back on the road, away from the apartment. So here we have 2:39, and this is the time when Jen is leaving to go pick up Maddie. So she left a little bit later. Now, hopefully I've got that somewhere on one of these maps, but what I do want to show here is that at that point in time, his car's still not quite back at the apartment complex. Now, we know that his phone was left there, but this screenshot basically shows he returned at 2:47. I'm guessing the bit under the redacted part basically is putting him smack bang located back at the apartment at 2:47. So meanwhile, what was going on with Jen? So we can see here that she did take Maddie's phone with her, and that she actually was headed to the school to pick Maddie up, or supposedly to pick Maddie up. Whether or not that was just part of the act, only Jen can tell us. I do have questions about the need to get there an hour early and the need to be at the very front of the line so that everyone could see you there, and so that you would presumably also be on camera. So you can see there quite clearly they have basically triangulated both phones. Jen was basically parked outside the school with Maddie's phone with her. So now to try and put all that into some kind of order. So basically going from early that morning through till 2:49. Let's have a look at what the timeline actually looks like. Now, please forgive me if I've made any mistakes, because honestly, working this out has felt like some mental marathon. I feel like my brain is just exhausted from trying to get to the bottom of all this. There's a lot that happened. So if I've missed anything, or if I've made a mistake, leave a comment below and let me know, because I will, when I've finished going through all these videos, then fix any mistakes that I've made along the way. So here we are looking at the 27th of February. The first thing we have is Maddie's phone being removed from the charger at 7:04. It records 113 steps at 7:05, 50 steps at 7:15, and then at 7:16 it is turned off. Next, we have a camera at the apartments recording SS. I'm just going to put SS for Stefan. So he's recorded on camera, and Maddie is slumped over in the passenger seat of the car. So that's at 7:30. See, it's even exhausted my chihuahua. You can probably hear her snoring right now. Okay, 7:35. Stefan puts items in the dumpster, and he's wearing a red shirt and tan pants. Now I know I've missed one of the changes because I think there were 3 changes. I've only got 2 recorded. So when we get through this, if you know when the other one is, drop me a comment below. At 7:40, Stefan is seen exiting the complex. So he heads out the gate. At 7:50, he does a U-turn and heads back in the direction of the complex. And at 8:19, he re-enters the complex through the front gate, and it is at this time that poor security guard helps him out with the clicker to get through the gate and sees Maddie in the passenger seat, not realising that she is deceased. Okay, at 8:31, Stefan exits the complex yet again. Now, I believe that Grizzly did a map time that was like an epic map time showing everywhere where Stefan went. So I'm not going to record all that in the timeline, and basically I'm trying to record the significant things. I will apologise, it's a bit messy here. I missed out that super important bit when he went into the parking garage, so I've had to add that in. So now it's a bit messy. It just seemed too daunting to type it all out again. Like I said, this video has been a marathon. Okay, so at 9:19, Jen's phone is removed from the charger. Now, we know that probably around 9:45, she leaves the apartment, but they've left out some details when it comes to Jen. So I'm only giving you an approximate time for that, hence the reason I put a question mark there. So at 9:35, Stefan is captured on camera entering a parking garage on St John Young Parkway. 6 minutes later, at 9:41, he is then captured on the second level of that parking garage. He's backed the car up into a spot where he thinks he's not going to be seen, opens the trunk of the vehicle, and places Maddie in the trunk. So while he's still out and about doing that, at just before 10, Jen is at the location of her appointment. At 10:05, we have that interesting thing on the map where we can see that Jen is still in the location of her appointment. And remember, she said she waited out in her car. And at the same time, at the same location, they have a camera recording of Stefan's car. Did they connect up? Who knows? If they did, it would have been pretty damn brief, because at 10:14, Stefan returns to the complex, and at 10:17, he makes an 8-minute phone call with Jen. So at 10:54, he's now wearing a blue shirt, and he's seen putting more items in the dumpster. 10:55, Maddie's phone is turned back on, and then 8 minutes later, at 11:03, he exits the complex via the main gate, and is caught on camera again at 11:22 at the vape shop. At 11:27, Jen returns to the apartment. Stefan is not at the apartment when she returns, despite her saying that he was, and despite her carrying on about them having a conversation. That never occurred. When she got back to the apartment, it was just Jen. So then you have at 11:56, so roughly half an hour after Jen returns to the apartment, then Stefan is also seen entering the complex. At 12:12, this is when he does a factory reset on his phone, which means they were together at the time that he did the factory reset. At 12:44, he exits via the rear gate. So him and Jen only spent about 50 minutes together. He certainly wasn't there when Jen got home, so she has consistently lied about that. And then he's left after only 50 minutes in the house. Now, there is a string of camera footage of his vehicle, with the final capture being at 1:16 before they lose track of his route. He goes off somewhere on Old Hickory Tree Road. We now know exactly where he ended up. So at 2:12, he's then captured again on camera, returning, and this time he has the spare wheel on his car. So he's been gone for just under an hour, in which time he has dumped, I hate saying it that way, but how else can you say it? He's dumped Maddie, changed the tyre on his car, and then headed back. Now, he's still out and about at 12:37 when Maddie's phone records 54 steps, which fits in with Jen leaving the complex at 2:39 to go and supposedly wait for Maddie at the school. Now, here's what I find interesting about Maddie's phone recording those 54 steps at 2:37. We know that it was turned on again at 10:55. This is the first time it's recorded steps since then, meaning that if Jen did actually spot it during the morning while she was organising things, she spotted it, but she didn't move it. And yet somehow she remarkably then remembers to go and collect it just before picking up Maddie from school. This is a woman who can't even, she could almost forget her name, she's that dense. So I just find it interesting that these are the only steps recorded after the phone was turned back on by Stefan at 5 to 11. Wouldn't you expect her to think, I mean, if it was me, my child, if I spotted the phone and I was going to take it with me when I collected her from school, then I would have grabbed it at the time that I saw it, and I would have put it with my phone so that I remembered to take it. Just an observation. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. So at 2:39, Jen leaves the complex to go supposedly pick up Maddie from school. At 2:43, Stefan enters the complex via the rear gate, so they only missed each other by a very small space of time. 2:47, he is at the apartment. 2:48, Jen is at the school with Maddie's phone. 3:24, Stefan puts more items in the dumpster, and then at 3:28, he immediately returns to the dumpster with more items. 4:36, he puts more items in the dumpster. So I'm going to leave it at that today because that's been a huge marathon. There's a lot to absorb there. And like I said, if I've forgotten anything, just leave a note in the comments so I can make adjustments to put together a final timeline. Now, in terms of this timeline, I'm more than happy for any content creators to screenshot this and use it for themselves. So my next timeline video will be looking at the period of time. I'll be looking at the rest of the 27th, basically, and into the morning of the 28th. So when Stefan goes out again in Jen's car. So I'll be starting basically from Jen waiting at the school to pick up Maddie. I've already covered Stefan putting stuff in the dumpster at 4:30 something, because that fits with the other dumpster trips, so I won't need to cover them again. So I know this has been a huge marathon of a video. If you stuck it out, thank you so much for listening, and hopefully I haven't scared you off with. It was a full-on. Like I said, my brain feels tired from trying to figure this one out. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you are new, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button. YouTube loves that, and it helps me get more people seeing my videos. And of course, please leave a comment below. I really love reading everyone's comments, and I love it when people have their own ideas about what's going on here. And I especially love it when people remind me of things I've forgotten, or point out things that I may have overlooked or may not be aware of. So I look forward to reading all those comments. I'll do my best to reply to as many as I can. Like I said, getting lots and lots of comments now on my videos, which is a good thing, but it definitely makes it harder to keep up with everyone. So thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I've been